So I like Theralac a lot. And in fact, for my babies, when we see babies that have the projectile vomiting with the yeast smell, and it's mom, this is what I recommend.
For the mom or the baby?
Yes.
Both?
Yes.
Okay.
Especially for the baby. Okay, to get their GI tract back on.
Does the probiotic, sorry,
Please?
does the probiotic deal with the C. diff symptoms
No.
as well?
No. So the C. diff we actually have to treat with a concomitant infection that actually chokes it out. Okay? So here we have, let's say this is the lining of the GI system, the gut. Okay? Then C. diff will come in and infect this and create this pseudo membrane. Okay? Which causes then a lot of irritation of the GI lining, and you'll see a lot of mucus production there. Okay? Normally we produce daily 4 to 8 cups of mucus in our GI system. Did you know that? Did you imagine having to blow your GI system? That'd be a lot of Kleenex. Okay. Fortunately, we don't have to. So what we do is we use another infection called Saccharomyces boulardii. That's Boulardii. You like that visual, I know. So Saccharomyces boulardii, and Saccharomyces boulardii actually then creates another membrane, and we use it for 10 days, and it'll actually choke the C. diff out. And then when we stop taking this, it actually goes out together. Okay, so it's pretty neat, pretty effective. All right, and that's a naturopathic cure, and also from the chiropractic internists board, chiropractic board of internists, that they do that. Okay, it's very, very effective. That's a great question. Now, let's just finish tonight with one more concept of a yeast as a benefit, okay? Because again, yeast, or as the body attempts to use yeast as a benefit. Let's actually, as we're leaving this topic, let me just remind you of one of the symptoms that we see with a GI yeast infection. Gut yeast infections, oftentimes what we'll find is periumbilical tenderness. So when you touch around the belly button, when you press, we'll actually find a lot of tenderness. And sometimes you'll actually even feel, remember when you used to prepare dough, then you break it into 2 balls, you roll it out, and you have those 2 dough balls and they're rising, or maybe you're just making them into rolls and they start to rise. But when you've patted them down and there's that dough ball, sometimes you'll find right below the navel, when you press on the abdomen, what feels like a dough ball, and it will be very, very tender. Okay, and we find that very, very commonly in this area. The other thing that you'll often find is when you tap in this area, you should only hear air in the 2 quadrants, the side on the liver and the side on the spleen. Okay. And what we find is that this hepatic flexure and the splenic flexure of the large intestine, these are the highest points of the large intestine, and these normally should be the sites where air is heard. But when you hear air down in this area, you're actually hearing indigestion. Okay? And you often are seeing and feeling the air created by fermenting foods because of this yeast. And that tenderness that you feel, you could actually swallow glass and the body wouldn't feel the cuts in the GI system. But distension of the GI system is very, very painful. Okay? So when you get this air pushing out, or you feel this discomfort an hour and a half to 2 hours after eating a meal, at the end of the day there's this bloated, tender feeling around the umbilicus, then we all actually start to look for this yeast infection. So just look for some of those types of signs. All right? Let's look at the last thing then. When people make bread, to activate yeast in a bowl, what do? You add the yeast, you add some warm water,
Sugar.
and then you add a little bit of sugar, right? So sugar is a great food for yeast. And then you see it start to ferment and kind of bubble. Okay, remember that? And it becomes activated. Similarly, in the body, if I cannot process my sugars efficiently, what does the body utilize to burn up those sugars or eat the sugars? Yeast. Okay? So, what is it, the condition called when I have an elevation of sugar? It's not a trick question.
Diabetes.
Diabetes, thank you. So diabetes is elevated blood sugar. And when you actually become familiar with the diabetic state, you'll begin to smell the yeast. Okay, when you're examining or when you're close to that person, you'll start to smell the yeast. And oftentimes the yeast, when they raise their arms, will be in the axillary area. So when they raise the arm, you'll actually see this big red patch. And you can actually, once you are aware of it, you'll smell it. Okay? When you actually look at the skin folds, so along the chest and then along the abdomen, these areas will often have this same reddened, rashy, yeasty smell. It's very, very strong. When you are around someone who's had that or doesn't even know that they have it yet, okay? They're in denial. I don't have diabetes. I don't have diabetes. Okay, well, yeah, you do. Well, let's get your blood sugar checked. That's something that the body's allowing to help us to maintain then again this sugar levels. Okay? Kind of fascinating though again that the body can do that. Watch for these types of signs. Now, children also, without going into full-blown diabetes, can have these types of sugar rashes. Okay? We talked about this a little bit last week, but a lot of times you'll see it as little children start to eat solid foods. A lot of times what you'll see is a condition that a lot of physicians just excuse quickly as a condition called eczema. Okay? So when you look at this little person, the areas that are most commonly afflicted are the fronts of the elbows, the wrists, okay, and the backs of the hands, the knees, and then the tops of the feet. And these areas are commonly afflicted by eczema as the baby is introduced to something other than mom's milk, okay? Because so often their little pancreases are still undeveloped and mom's milk provides enzymes for them to be able to digest the perfect food that it is for the baby. So when we prematurely begin to introduce sugars that are too concentrated for baby can't do anything with it, and so it tries to push it out, and their little body starts to use this yeast already as a means of controlling that. You'll see though that they'll get these reddened rashes around the creases of the elbows, the creases of the wrists, the backs of the hands, the knees, the ankles, and the tops of the feet. Okay? Because the most common startup foods for babies are bananas, strawberries because they're sweet, and then I want to give my baby something healthy, so I put it in a bottle and I start to give them juice. Right? Is that not true? It's just, we think that's what they'd like, so that's what we give them. Right? Really, babies' first foods shouldn't be given until they have little choppers. Right? Because those little choppers are telling us that now they're starting to have enzymes in the alimentary canal to be able to actually utilize chewed up foods. The other thing is, if we start them on sweet, remember there are 4 taste regions of the tongue. If we give them sweet first, they're going to develop sweet. How many of you ever seen little kids though in the South that suck on dill pickles? You ever seen that? Walking around with a brown bag and a giant dill pickle, just sucking away on it. Just love a dill pickle. Little kids from South America that have hot chili peppers or jalapenos. Have you seen that? They just love them. Okay? What did we get started on? We're Americans. Apple pie and hot dogs. Yeah! Okay? Of course. And some what?
Chevrolet.
And Chevrolet, yeah. Yeah. The two most common choking agents in America, right? What are they? Marshmallows and hot dogs, right? So many of our kids actually, that's a big part of their diets. This then, again, not a bad thing, premature, and the concentrations may be too intense, right? Start the child on something that is less offensive. For example, squashes, okay, peas, some of the little baby foods. If you look at them, I'd actually suggest going online and looking at some organic, non-sugared baby foods that you can actually do at home for yourselves, right? That's where I would suggest starting.